So welcome and join in our Science of Mind Management today, and looking forward to it, having an intellectual conversation, enlightening videos, and immersive book reading, real life scenarios, and introspective activities. So I welcome you all, and it's good to see you all. Radhe Radhe, good evening, good afternoon, and good morning to all of you. Without further delay, I will turn this over to Ajay Bhai. Radhe Radhe, Ajay Bhai, are you there?
Radhe Radhe Sunilji, Radhe Radhe everyone. A very, very warm welcome to our Science of Mind Management session. This is a class, as you always know, I'm super excited about. Every Friday we meet at 8 p.m. Central Time and we discuss life transforming wisdom from dear Swami Mukundananda ji, which he has documented in this wonderful book, which we are studying and learning and trying to apply in our lives. So, like we always do, let's get started with a prayer to bring divine sentiments into our heart as we become open to receive this knowledge. Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwaraha, Guru Sakshat Para Brahma, Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kansa Chanur Mardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum. Radhe Radhe, very warm welcome once again. Today we will open up a new chapter of Science of Mind Management, which is the chapter number 4, the role of intellect in controlling the mind. The topic we will be taking up is the very first topic, how mind and intellect interact. We will, like always, we will have a book reading, we will have a visual summary of the concepts we learned, and try to practically apply it with a case study, with certain situations and interactive questions. Like we do, we will read the book first up. So let me bring up my screen with the book here. I will invite about 6 to 7 participants to raise their hands. And if you're, I would also invite those who have not previously read. I would really encourage, if you've never read it also, today is your time to find some inspiration and also raise your hand to read with us, because once you read these divine messages, it impacts us, it helps us in our journey. Okay, I'm seeing.
We'll start with, let's see, Seemaji and Samji. So we'll start with Samji. Go ahead, Radhe Samji.
Radhe Radhe ji.
Samji.
Radhe Radhe. Go ahead, Samji.
Go ahead.
Let the screen come.
Yes.
Yeah, there you go.
The role of intellect in controlling the mind. Oh, what happened again?
It should
Folks
be.
has spotlighted your video for every. Oh, okay.
Oh, Sunil bhai, you can remove the spotlight for now.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't matter.
Okay.
We all are acquainted with our whimsical mind. It flits from place to place and from topic to topic like the ball in a roulette game. It wanders off even from very interesting topics than what to say of it is a rebelliousness when the work at hand is dreary. Consequently, we develop the notion that our mind is not under our control and that we just have to put up with unwelcome distractions and thoughts. However, this is not the case. If we learn to harness the power of the intellect, we will discover immense ability to manage our mind. Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe Samji, wonderful.
Samji.
Thank you so much.
Seemaji, Radhe Radhe.
Ajay ji and Sunil ji.
Radhe Radhe.
In the last chapter, we learned how breaking bad habits and developing new ones requires a relate intellect. The Bhagavad Gita also repeatedly refers to the importance of the intellect. In it, Lord Krishna describes his teachings as Buddhi Yoga, or the yoga of the intellect. He repeatedly instructs Arjuna to surrender his intellect to God. In light of this, let us explore the intellect's position in the internal hierarchy.
Thank you so much, Seemaji. So Swamiji has set a very nice context, right? So if you see the sequence, the other day I was thinking about how Swamiji has, let these chapters flow into each other. If you think about deeply, it actually is mirroring how Lord Krishna gives Arjun the Gyan in Bhagavad Gita. So that's so interesting. Like right now we are getting into the concept of Buddhi Yoga. So let's understand that a little more. I have 4 more paragraphs and I need more people. So don't be shy. Raise your hand. We will really, really appreciate it. Even if you've never...
Radhe, Radhe, go ahead and unmute yourself. So glad to hear from you. Go ahead and unmute yourself, please. Go ahead.
Radhe Radhe everyone.
Radhe, Radhe.
Yeah, in the last chapter, we learned how breaking bad habits.
This one we read. You can
Next slide. Next.
Yes.
Yeah.
The blue
How
part.
the mind and intellect interact. The intellect makes decisions and the mind generates desires. For example, if the intellect decides that happiness is in the ice cream, the mind hankers for it. If the intellect decides that money will solve all of life's problems, the mind thinks money, money, money. And if the intellect decides that prestige is the source of happiness, the mind yearns to be famous and respected in society. In other words, the intellect makes the decisions and the mind engages in sankalp, hankering, and vikalp, aversion. Between them, the intellect's position is of paramount importance. Radhe Radhe.
Thank you so much, EPG. Wonderful reading. Let me go forward here. Yes.
Radhe, Radhe, Induji, if you can unmute yourself, please. Thank you.
Radhe Radhe, Induji.
Radhe Radhe, everybody.
Radhe, Radhe.
Here,
Go ahead.
you can read this portion. What I'm highlighting.
How did Ganga Prasad gain such control over the mind? I think there was another paragraph on top of it.
So I'm skipping the story.
Oh,
it's a long
okay.
story.
Okay.
This paragraph is the gist of the whole story. This guy, this person that Swamiji describes is Ganga Prasad, who is really hungry for 4 days, and he's got a chappan bhog thali, like a platter full of 56 varieties of food. So he's hankering for that gulab jamun that he's going to eat. But somebody comes from behind and says, "Hey, there's poison in this gulab jamun." Now this paragraph comes in.
How did Ganga Prasad gain such control over the mind? Though he was hungry for the last 4 days and his senses were hankering for food, he abstained from the delicious gulab jamun. The control came from the intellect. When it decided that the gulab jamun is harmful to his self-interest, it clamped down upon the mind and senses. The Yajurveda states to cross.
Yes, thank you so much, Indraji. Wonderful. Have the next participant.
Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe.
Thank you, Ji.
We have, or we can go to Seemaji and Samji.
Seemaji, go ahead.
Thank you. To cross over the material ocean and attain your divine goal, illumine your intellect with divine knowledge, then with the illuminated intellect, control the unruly mind. This is why it is said, knowledge is power. For it is true or correct knowledge that enables good decision making. Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful thing or message to remember all our life from Upanishad.
We will go to Rupa Ji. Radhe Radhe, Rupa Ji from Hyderabad. How are you? Thank you.
Radhe Radhe, everyone. Yeah. Usually, however the situation...
It will move a little bit. Now it should be stable.
Usually,
go ahead, please.
I could not see your screen, sir.
Now you will be able to. Can you see it?
Right now I can see it. Thank you. Usually, however the situation is not so straightforward, the mind and intellect are not always in accord. Sometimes the intellect is unclear about what is beneficial, and at the other times the mind is adamant about the object it craves. Thus, strife arises in the internal machinery. Let us understand our inner apparatus further.
Wonderful reading, Rupa Ji. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for all the participants for coming forward and helping us to read through this. Now, let's look at this. It is so interesting that Swamiji used the word strife. Now, strife is sort of a wrestling match or some sort of a war, some sort of, animosity going on. And where is all this animosity going on? In the internal machinery. We all have this internal machinery. The question is, do we know how it works? Do we know what are the components? At this point in the book, Swamiji thought it is very important to have the foundation of the entire spiritual journey is resting upon this concept of mind, intellect, man, chitta, buddhi, ahankar. So that's why we have to understand it. And let's do that by also recapping a little bit what our journey has been. So let me also really quickly bring up, as we talk about this whole journey, it's important to understand how each thing is unfolding and linking back to what we have previously studied. We started this journey by understanding that there is a need. This need is to manage the mind. We understand that there are so many afflictions, anger, greed, attachment, desires. We understood so many of them, right? And we talked about practical solutions, how we can get over anger, how we can control greed, and how does this journey go forward. Then Swamiji gave us practical ways in the form of various tools that we got. And we had very, very good sessions, very special working sessions in applying a habit change contract and many such tools around understanding how to remove bad habits from our lives and how to become receptive to changing ourselves with the power of good habits. With all of that done, now is where we are getting deeper dive, sort of a deeper plunge into the ocean of spiritual knowledge by understanding the role of intellect. Because all of this journey forward is really based upon the CEO of our mind, or the federal government of our human body, which is the intellect. So we need to understand that. Let's do a bit of understanding before we talk about the intellect. It's also interesting to talk about what is this mind. There's so many interpretations, so many usages of this single term that it's always good to understand it very clearly, as we have received the knowledge from Swami Mukundananda in his beautiful, simple words. We thought it will be a good recap to understand this. So let's look at the 1, 2, 3 of the mind. Number one concept, mind that we talk about is different than the brain. Many people confuse. In fact, I was watching, there was this online, many on motivational speakers, they talk about mind and brain and intellect in the same breath. Well, our scriptures very clearly tell us, mind is a sukshma or subtle machine. It's a machine that is fitted within us. It is not like a phone that you can hold. A phone is an external machine. Mind is an internal machine. Brain is the hardware. It is not the software. At the same time, this mind, what does it do? It's a factory. It is continuously generating thoughts after thoughts after thoughts. You sit down sometimes and you realize that in few seconds you're thinking about your wedding day. A few seconds later you started thinking about your job. Few seconds later your mind is going on and thinking about something some person did to you. In a single day our mind has more than 40,000 thoughts. Isn't it amazing? And this mind also stores all the ideas, the perceptions, the beliefs, the knowledge. So many things get stored in this mind. They say mind is deeper than the Pacific Ocean. Think about it. Have you seen, do you all know that there's the icebergs that are there in the ocean? Less than 10% of it is actually visible outside. Now, more than 90% of an iceberg is actually under the water. Similar is the concept or parallel for our mind. So much of it is below the surface, in sort of subconscious mind that science has just begun to understand. Yes. So at this point, let me ask a question to all of you. And if there's anybody who want to quickly chime in, we can take a quick line or two comments. Is the brain same as the mind? What do you all think? Anybody wants to chime in on brain being same as the mind? Raise your hand if you have any thoughts.
Annapunaji, go ahead, Radhe, if you can unmute yourself.
Yes, I think brain is like a hardware and mind is like a software, you know. I think mind generates thoughts and, you know, I think, you know, intellect helps to, you know, strengthen the positive thoughts and help to decide what helps for future spiritual or any type of growth. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Annapunaji. You hit the nail on the head. Brain is the hardware. You use the exact same words. Awesome. Brain, hardware. I'll come to Seemaji. I have another few questions. So, science has not even decoded 1% of brain.
Even in a stressful industry.
Sunil bhai, if you can mute.
Yeah, go ahead, Steve.
Thank you so much. Okay. So, we are talking about this, that brain is the hardware portion of it. Science today, medical science says we have understood 1% of this brain. Now think about mind being the subtle machine and so much more that science can hopefully understand someday. Now the next question I have is, do plants have a mind? Do they have a brain? And do animals have intellect? You can answer any one of those or more than one if you like to.
Go ahead, Seemaji.
Okay, thank you. Do plants have a mind? I know I've always heard, and I can, plants have a soul. I do talk to my plants and play music and sing to them, so they grow better. And that I have known that because that's like giving energy, positive energy for them to grow. So do their mind is generating thoughts. So I don't know if they have the mind. And a brain, not the one that we are conceptualizing, like the picture. Do animals have intellect? Yes, they do, but it is in limited, I believe, for survival of the fittest. That would be their intellect, and how to acquire food and mating, and which is intellect that doesn't tell them what is right from wrong. So at a lower level.
Worth further discussion, Seemaji, I must say. So let's hear some more participants, then I will reveal what's the message that Swamiji has on this.
Go ahead, Samji.
Radhe. The plants have a mind. Plants do have a mind. They may not be having a brain. Brain, in a way, you can say, but when the stem is there, all those things are there, maybe a little bit brain, but I do have a mind because I do the gardening also. And I have the weird habit, like in the summer, like for 6-8 hours, I am outside talking to my plants, talking to my fish in the pond. And I have the gut feeling. And when I talk to the rabbits, that, okay, first warning, do not eat my plants, let it grow them. Then you can bring your friends and everybody, then we can enjoy it together. And for some reason, you can say luckily, as what I was doing for the past 2-3 years, no rabbits usually come. They come, eat the grass and all those things. They don't bother about that one. Now next, do animals have intellect? In the strict sense, you cannot say that they have the instincts. If you count as the intellect, if consciousness, they have it, they may be having the intellect to a lot lower level, maybe a level of 2, or if you say 16 is the level, then maybe 2, 3, maybe the intellect level. But practically not the intellect, they basically have the instincts to have all their 4 needs to be filled out. Like food, shelter, mating, things like that, all those 4 categories. Radhe.
Radhe Samji, thank you so much for your contribution. I love the examples of, you know, how you talk to your animals, even rabbits.
Fish, rabbits, and all the birds are chirping outside in the summer when I'm out there.
Right. So all the plants and species and animals, they actually respond to emotions. So they have a mind. So I'll reveal some of the answers, but let's also hear from Annapunaji before I further go. Go ahead, Annapunaji. Radhe Radhe.
Yes. Okay. I just want to say that animals have mind, but they don't have intellect. That's what I have heard in Swamiji's lectures. And plants also have a mind, but I don't know whether they have intellect. I don't know about that. But I think animals don't have intellect. Yeah, I
So,
know.
Annapunaji, you are spot on. Let me reveal at this point. No brain, right? So brain is, as we talked about, is the hardware portion of it. And plants don't have a brain, but plants, like animals, have a mind. They can feel. Like we read in the book, right? Sankalp and Vikalp, cravings and aversions is the function of the mind. So that part is there. All the plants have it. When it comes to intellect, intellect is the power with which we hold knowledge in our brain, in our mind, and we use that to control the mind. That ability animals do not have. As same way, plants also do not have the intellect. Because when we just discussed, right, plants have a mind, but not the intellect power of the mind. Let's have one more question before we go further. And this would be a bit of a tricky one. Can the mind function when brain is damaged? We hear many medical stories, right? Some people's brains get damaged. Brain is damaged for some people, right? We call them brain dead or whatever. Can the mind still function for them? I see some heads nod. Anybody would like to quickly chime in?
I just want to make a comment that M. Lakshmi Prasannaji said about the brain is an anatomical structure, mind is a functional part. So I just wanted to make that comment. And let's see, to answer that, we will go, Seemaji, go right ahead, Radhe.
The mind function when the brain is damaged. Yes, the mind is the software separate entity. Yes, the mind can does have the feelings, except that the person who's brain damaged cannot express them because of inability to
communicate or use the senses.
Yeah, inability to communicate anything. Yeah,
love that answer, Seemaji. Thank you so much. So we have seen many situations where people are maybe having their brain damaged, but their mind, which is a subtle machine, can still function because it is subtler than the brain. Remember these things, that the brain is made up of the 5 gross elements, right? We call, what are the 5 gross elements? Fire, water, air, sky, and earth. But mind is a subtler energy. It is not, it's beyond these 5 elements. So that's why we say, in fact, in Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna has even talked about that there are 8 energies. And he's called mind, intellect, and ego as the 3 separate energies, then the 5 gross elements. At this point now, I thought it would be wonderful to take an example we all can relate with. Well, we know all of us use a laptop, don't we? We have used computers, phones, or whatever. So if we take today any mobile device, any computer device today, what does it have? For those who are engineers, it will be very, very easy to relate. But if you're not very computer savvy, I'll still make it very easy for you to understand. But if you go through this example, it becomes so crystal clear to understand this whole concept. In any device today that we use, any computer device we use, this is the 4-step process happening. At the bottom is the hardware. On the hardware, there is an operating system. Like we call about Android, Windows, Linux, Unix. These are all operating systems, right? These operate the hardware at the machine level. Then there are applications that we put. How many apps do you have on your phone? I guess probably hundreds. So those are sort of the applications that we put on top of the operating system. And then we, as the user, go and use that device. If this is very clear, now look at it this way, that the hardware and the software piece are very similar Actually, before I go further, one more point to understand here, that hardware is the physical aspect. You can touch it, you can feel it. Can you touch and feel a software? No, right? Hardware has a form and a function. Software is just function, because we can't see the code. It's there in the machine, but can you touch the code? You can't touch, you can't understand what is this app. I mean, you can touch an app on your phone screen, but inside the phone, you don't know where is that app really, right? It's a bunch of code lines that is stored somewhere inside the device. But now if you compare it, this is very similar to how God has made our body. Hardware is our body and the senses, right? And the software that runs it is the mind. This software that is mind is functional, is subtle. Even the brain can be considered the part of the hardware of the body. But the software that we call as mind has 4 functions. Use these words very clearly. 4 functions, 4 components, as some people call it, but I prefer to call it functions, because essentially these are not very unique things, but this is how different energies within the mind manifest. Man, Chitta, Buddhi, Ahankar. We'll get into much more detail in our next class on these components and how they interact and how they kind of work with each other and what is to be done about them and so on and so forth. But for this class today, it's enough to stop at understanding that mind is a factory of thoughts, as we all know, but intellect is that body or that component of the mind that allows us to take decisions. It is that part of our mind which allows us to have convictions, resolutions, all of those things. The other day I was thinking, if you think about any river, what does it do? It starts from the clouds raining on a mountain. It flows through hundreds and thousands of miles and finally goes and merges into the ocean, from where the water cycle starts again, right? There is also a parallel here with how the mind works. Sri Maharaj Ji and Swami Ji in their bhajans, they've talked about that mind is made up of Maya. Because it is made up of Maya, it is naturally attracted to the material world outside us. Because it is going in that direction, it's like a river that is naturally flowing towards the ocean, right? Now, when we try to take it to the divine subject, it naturally gravitates back. It is very similar, like if you live in a multi-story apartment and you use some sort of a water pump system to put the water up, it requires an effort to send that water to the higher and higher levels. Same way, to tend the mind into divine subjects and even attending these classes, it takes a bit of a sacrifice and effort to take the mind to these subjects. Finally, few interesting call-outs on this topic. In fact, I'm sure some of you are reading this Bhakti Shatak. We have a wonderful class on Bhakti Shatak that goes on. In the couplet number 36, Bhakti Shatak. Shatak is a collection of 100 verses on Bhakti from Sri Maharaj Ji. This is one of my favorite ones. So it goes like this. Man maya te hi banyo, Maya te sansar radhe radhe. Ya te man bhavat sada, yah sansar asar radhe radhe. Simply stated, this beautiful verse from Sri Maharaj Ji says that mind or man is made up of Maya. And Maya is also creating the entire material world around us. Because the composing energy for both these things, the mind and the word, is the same, which is Maya, they are sajatiya. They are of the same type. Because they are of the same type, they're naturally attracted to each other. So there is no wonder why our mind without effort goes to the word. Yate man bhavat sada. Mind loves the word and naturally goes to it. How beautifully Sri Maharaj Ji has expressed it. In fact, there is also another bhajan, Sadhana Karu Pyare. It's a 56-line bhajan that talks about everything that all the sadhaks, as sadhaks, we all should be aware about. In there, one of the lines comes like this. Man ko mano shatru iski, sunahu kachu nahi pyare. Sadhana karu, sadhana karu, sadhana karu pyare. Sadhana karu pyare. Very, very amazing bhajan, very amazing set of lines. Here, Sri Maharaj Ji has said, and Swamiji has a wonderful, wonderful description of the entire 56 lines. You can actually go on YouTube and check that out. There's a YouTube. If you don't find it, let me know. I can happy to share that link also with you. But here, Swamiji tells us in the description that this mind or the man, we have to consider that as our enemy in the current state, because this enemy is naturally going to the world, and we have to fight with this enemy. As we just read in the book, there is a strife going on. And first step of that strife is to be aware that our enemy is inside us. Sunahu kachu nahi pyare. Many times your mind will ask us to say, let me just not attend the session. Let me just, watch some TV series. It's Friday. Let's watch some movie. There's so many things that come to the mind every given moment, right? We get hundreds of reasons to not do good things. Sri Maharaj is telling us, don't listen to the vagaries of the mind. Control it with intellect. But as we try to control it, we see so many difficulties come in the way. Just like Arjuna asked the Lord Krishna in Bhagavad Gita. Arjun's question was, oh Lord, this mind looks impossible to control, just like a hurricane or a typhoon or a tornado. And Lord Krishna smilingly told him, look, Arjun, this is difficult, but it is not impossible. It is possible to control the mind with abhyas and vairagya, as the two swords that we are all given to use. Even Lord Krishna used the word buddhi yoga. We all are aware about yoga, the physical postures we can do, the asanas we can do. But did we think that we have to do a yoga asana for our buddhi? This is the concept of buddhi yoga. Every now and then we have to control the mind using the intellect. This controlling of the mind using the intellect is being termed as buddhi yoga. This is the most important yoga asana that we should think about. And then some interesting realizations I'll also share very quickly before we go to our interactive segment is that, I was thinking about how mind gets attracted to the world. Like, some of my friends who are into cigarettes and alcohol from my college days, right? I was looking at, how they get attracted to those things. It's very easy. Like, so they see some friends doing that and they start thinking, oh, there is happiness in doing that. I will get some prestige. I'll be called a good guy or this kind of person. It creates an impression in our mind. And then once we get attached to that thing, our intellect gets drowned. Literally, it gets drowned. What does this mean? Intellect gets drowned. Our intellect has a tendency to get drowned in love. Now we know love, true love, is in the divine realm. When we talk about the material world, this divine love gets transposed into lust. This is what happens in the material world. But in both directions, buddhi or the intellect literally gets drowned in the love. When we are attached to something, our intellect says, it's fine, let's just do it. For example, the person who's attached to cigarettes, he will read the box. He'll say, oh, it says cigarette smoking is injurious to health. No worries, let's take the next cigarette, and then he starts to smoke it. He very well knows this. His intellect has the knowledge, but he is not using that knowledge. Same way, when we have divine attachment, there is a bhajan from Sri Maharaj Ji again. It goes like, Tum mere the mere ho, मेरे रहोगे, समझू नहीं समझाने से. In there, a line comes, समझ प्रेम में डूब गई, अब क्या होगा समझाने से. This samajh is the intellect. This samajh prem mein doob gayi. This is a very elevated stage of spiritual life when your intellect surrenders and actually gets submerged in divine love. That is the state we have all got to go to one day. With that deep realization, let's proceed further. And before I mention the interactive questions, and I'll let Sunilji read those out for you in a bit, I'm sure most of you, if not all, have watched the famous movie series, The Matrix, right? In this movie series, there are two characters. One is our Neo. Neo, now I thought of Neo's, now Matrix 4 is coming up very soon. So I thought, why not talk about a Neo which is actually blinded? So this Neo that we have on the screen cannot see. So this Neo represents for us the intellect. And the Agent Smith, which is after him and trying to take him down, is very smart, much more than the movie Matrix, and much more powerful, much more weaponry he has. And that is the mind. The question we all have in front of us, and I'll let Sunil Bhai read through it, is how can we win this Mahabharat between the two? Radhe Radhe Sunil Bhai.
Radhe Radhe Ajay. Before we go to that, can I just take a few minutes of our time to make some announcements here real fast?
Absolutely.
Okay, so first of all, before we go any further, if you like this science of mind management, I'd like you to introduce you to the Youth Book Club that will be starting next week, starting January 29th for the youth. We will have the Science of Mind Management for Youth Book Club starting January 29th, every Saturday, 11 o'clock. So please do take advantage of that. That's if you know a lot of youth, they can so much benefit from this when they go to college, other higher education. It's amazing. If they're helping us, you can imagine what it'll do for the next generation. So I'll encourage that. Next, I'd like to make an announcement about Sanskriti 2022, which will be coming February 11th to February the 14th, February 13th. And it's a cultural extravaganza by the J.K. Yog Bal Mukur and Youth Club. And so we will have trophies and medal for winners, certificate for lots of categories. Kids can participate in more than one contest. There will be Yugal food in the Yugal Kunj cafeteria competition. We will have dance contests, coloring contests, Sudoku, chess, carom, Sanskriti quiz, yoga, shloka recitation, impromptu speech, fancy dress, singing contest. Lots of events for all the kids, and it's a great thing. I've been there many times, and I've been there looking forward to it again. Then we have on February 19th to 20th, J.K. Yog 175th Saint Tyagraj Aradhana. So please do participate in that, and it will be on Saturday and Sunday from 1 to 10:15 Indian time, but it will be in Dallas. So Tyagraj is observed by artists, gurus, students, and connoisseurs of Carnatic music around the world. So we will pay homage to the great saint composer Tyagraj. So please do join that. And then we have International Women's Day coming up, March. We will dig into March now. So just want to make sure you mark your calendar, March 5th to March the 8th. So we'll more announcements, more details will be that. But then also another event in March that comes up is the Dallas Holy Fest, which will be March 19th and 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. And this year we will have Hari Anandji himself, as well as Shalmani Kolkade from Balam Pichkari's famous song. And we will have color play, dance, carnival rides for children, Desi Bazaar, lots of food, and live concerts. So please do mark your calendar. That will be Saturday, March 19th. And then just a quick another announcement about a yoga session. Every Sunday, 9:15, after our morning book club session that we have in the morning, after that, please do join. It's a free session for everybody. So with that being said, Now I've given enough tools for all of us to fight that battle between the mind and the intellect. So the question in front of us is how to win that modern Mahabharat between our mind and intellect that we are fighting every day within itself. So the question is, have you experienced your mind as separate from you? So we have 90 seconds for your response. We look forward to it. So please do raise your hand up and we would love to hear you from you. How to win the modern Mahabharata? Let's see, Radhe Radhe Rajendra ji, if you can unmute yourself, go ahead, please.
Radhe Radhe Rajendra ji.
Radhe Radhe Sunil ji, Ajay ji.
Radhe
Happy
Radhe.
to connect with you after a long time. I had classes on Saturday mornings. Today I had no class, so I was able to join. I really loved the way you sing, Ajay ji. It was really good. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I would like to answer first question, how to win the modern Mahabharat between our mind and intellect. Actually, I don't love to do yoga exercises and my mind will always complain, oh, it will be so painful like that. But by keeping this in mind, if in old age my muscles are not strong, then how will I walk and do some works and do some seva like that? If by forcing my mind thinking about that my old age will be like that, I will force my mind to win that battle, but most of the time I will lose, but sometimes I will win. In that case, I am trying to manage this this doing exercises.
Amazing, amazing, Rajendra ji. This is so amazing. You gave me another way of inspiring myself. Thank you so much. You know, this contemplation actually is the Shreya and prayer contemplation, right? You're looking at the long-term benefit of doing some good habit. Wonderful too. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rajendra ji. We continue this journey with Sam ji. Radhe Radhe, Sam ji, go ahead and meet yourself.
Radhe Radhe. Between the mind and the intellect, of course, it is a very, very difficult, like the Arjun said, mind is very difficult to control more than the wind itself too. So intellect has to control the mind. Obviously, we have to make a choice for the Shriya and Priya, the good things, and tie with something, intellect with something. So more so that you feel that if you live longer, you will be healthy, you will be able to see the world or whatever, some kind of good or bad some kind of attachment, to give it some kind of crutches or something, whatever you call it, so that once the intellect is kind of convinced somehow, then obviously it will be the one who will be controlling the mind. So you have to pay more attention to the intellect, so God-worldly activity or something, so intellect will be directing the mind. Definitely mind and the senses will be trying to abstain from the nonsense things. So not that easy, but slowly and steadily it'll be there. Possibility is there. It's not difficult. It's difficult, it's not impossible.
Thank you, Samji. We're getting at a wonderful message here. You're saying that it is about how convinced your intellect is, right? The root is how convinced your intellect. The more convinced you have, the more powerful your intellect is to control the mind, right? Thank you so much for sharing.
The second one, have you experienced your mind as separate from you? Yes and no. Sometimes, like doing yoga or shavasana or something, you can feel that your body is still lying on the floor, and maybe if you pay attention, maybe you can feel that your astral body is getting out of your physical body, gross body, and that you separate. So that, I think, is some kind of weird example out of that.
No, it's a fair example, right? Many people, realize this, right? At some stages of sadhana, different experiences manifest, right? And that's why I have this question. Thank you for sharing that experience, because I'm sure all of us have diverse set of experiences on the spiritual journey. So let's also hear some more participants. I'd love to see all of your hands raise up, and because this is where we learn from each other. This discussion segment is what makes it exciting for all of us to hear each other's experiences and learn. Right? As you think about this modern Mahabharat, some of the concepts that are going to come up are really about intellect is controlled by or convinced by the logic, the knowledge, the divine wisdom that we feed it in there. Just like Rajendra Prasad ji, you were saying earlier, right? So you have convinced your intellect that doing yoga asanas and pranayama is important for me. How did you convince yourself? The process of convincing yourself is Shravan Manan Nididhyasan, by looking at, understanding the divine wisdom from the scriptures and repeating it again and again so that it becomes strong in the intellect. And with that resolute intellect, you're able to then control the mind. Correct?
Beautiful. So we were talking about the plants, and of course, it's a famous quote: "Speaking kindly to plants helps them grow." Imagine what speaking kindly to humans can do. And that's what reminds me of the forum here. When we listen to each other, we inspire each other. So imagine there's words of wisdom that we've spoken by the Lord himself. Imagine what that does to us in a subtle mind. We don't think about it, but the long-term effects is amazing, you know?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I think people today, I'm seeing a little bit of a shy group today. So,
well, Padmaji, Radhe Radhe, go ahead and mute yourself.
We're running out of time, so I'm finding it pretty unusual today.
Go ahead, Padmaji.
Radhe Radhe. So, Ajit, to just clarify this, I think you have said this 2 times and I was a little bit lost. Mind and man, you're using in the same sentence, mind and man. Did I hear it correctly?
Yeah. So mind, okay, let me clarify this. Really, really, really important point, actually. Thank you for asking it. The word man in Hindi refers to the mind.
Oh.
But this mind or the man is also used in 2 contexts when it is separated into 2 things, man and buddhi, mind and intellect. So in our scriptures, you will find 4 types of references. In some scriptures, the mind as a whole or man as a whole is just one thing. Okay. In Bhagavad Gita, man is referred to as 2 different things, man and buddhi, mind and intellect, right? Which together form the thing called as antahkarana. Okay. And Patanjali Yoga Sutra, the other scriptures, if you go, they're further gone deeper to establish the different functions of the same thing called mind into man, chit, buddhi, ahankar. I hope that helps.
I'm not very proficient not proficient at all in Sanskrit, but the regular Hindi language, when I use like in Hindi language, man is man, right? Like man is like mansu in Telugu.
Man, right? So yeah, so that man that we call, right? It's a very broad term, right? It's a collection of different functions within us. We call it as heart as well, right?
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So I'm fine with I'm fine with not being proficient, but I'm saying, okay, all this time, did I not even have the basic foundations of the Hindi? I was thinking man was man. Okay. About the question itself, right? The mind and the intellect. Our desires will constantly drag you back to what we want or what we desire, whether it's an object or a subject or a situation or whatever it is. But I think those are temptations, right? When we recognize these are temptations, when you give that word to that thing, that these are temptations. So what happens is when you give that word temptation, that means we are saying to ourselves that we have control. Temptation is something which is not impossible. Temptation is something that if we have the strong willpower, that we can control ourselves. So that is step 1, I think. When you realize this, that it is a temptation, I just have to zap my mind back, and I have the willpower to zap my mind back. And then the step 2 process is zap that temptation, and how can you transform that temptation into something which is divine? It could be action, it could be a prayer, it could be meditation, it could be an act of gesture, it could be a simple hug to a kid. It could be anything that you want to take that energy and transform into something which is more productive in the spiritual realm. That is what I think we can do in that moment when we're getting through that temptation. Acknowledge that it is the temptation. How can I take this temptation and transform this into something beautiful that God has given, anything spiritual that you can transform into? That I think will help our mindset and our behaviors. Like, how can you not worry that, oh, I am getting into this? Get into it. Okay, acknowledge it. But how can you slowly transform the temptation into something divine in that moment?
Very practical idea and very practical tool, Padmaji. I loved it actually. Because in those moments, right, in the small choices, we have to realize that this is a temptation I'm falling prey to, right? And first step is that awareness. That awareness opens the door to a lot of progress later on. Wonderful tool. Thumbs up to that. Thank you so much.
That was beautifully described, Padmaji. Really nice. Thank you. Anshumanji, Radhe Radhe, if you can unmute yourself, please. Thank you.
Yeah, Ajayji, we have two choices. One is the blue pill, which is to live in the auto mode, the way we are doing it right now. Second is to take the red pill. The red pill is the intense desire to know God and to deep dive and to be one with God. Secondly, we need to develop the spiritual vision, the way Neo had the matrix vision, and wherein he used to see everything in binary 1 and 0. Similarly, we need to develop that spiritual vision of seeing God in everybody. Also, Neo had a latent potential, and everybody can be Neo and everybody can be God. So we need to realize that. Also, with an aim of experiencing the oneness, which is there in the Savikalp Samadhi, I think it's very, very important to have purity of heart and pure consciousness. Neo, along with Trinity, tried to help Morpheus when he was caught. So similarly, we need to actually help others on the path. Also, he tries to learn the rules of the game or the rules of the matrix. So similarly, with the help of Guru, you need to understand the divine realm. It's very, very important to read and understand the awareness. Also, Neo was aware about his mental states. And similarly, he could rewrite his own mental programs to see the agents as the binary digits, and he could conquer himself. So with that objective, and it can only happen if you take the red pill, and with the Tivra Samveg or the intense desire to know God, hopefully we can actually become Neos. Thank you.
Amazing, Anshuman Bhai. I just loved it. We have thrown ball out of the park here with a sixer out here. I don't know how many claps I can do for you today, but this movie Matrix actually is, I don't know whether the director really followed everything, every dot in the movie. If you think deeply, like you explained, Anshuman Bhai, everything connects back to Bhagavad Gita with the concept of the choices, with the concept of seeing God in everything, right? The director in the movie is showing like digits everywhere, but the concept is you can see beyond the body. You can see that there is unity in all of us, right? It is so amazing. I love the line of thinking you brought into this. I just simply loved every word of it, Anshuman Bhai. Thank you. Thank you so much.
This is beautiful. So true. Such Chit Anand. What can I say about that? Beautiful. And I wasn't sure which way you were going with the blue and the red pill, but you definitely brought it into perspective. Thank you, Anshumanji. So Anusha ji online said in the chat, she says, Radhe Radhe, I think we should repeatedly revise spiritual concepts, like how we revise or study for an exam. When any question or a twisted situation is thrown at us, the revised concept will immediately come to our rescue. This way we can overpower the mind. Beautiful.
Beautiful message. Thank you so much.
And that's why I think continuous contemplation, continuous revision, continuous revisiting all these forums that we have helps us conquer that, because otherwise, you know what happened with the Maya, right?
Well, Surya, also another thing is, right, our intention also is that regularly every few sessions we bring in some sort of a revision session or a quiz session or some way to look at this knowledge again and again and yet again. And the reason is that sometimes, when I was looking at this copy, it's like, okay, maybe, I was actually thinking that maybe many of the people here in the audience, you've been regularly attending online sessions, you probably already know the difference between the mind and the intellect. But then when I went deeper, a lot of new realizations, a lot of new ideas, new ways of understanding this knowledge came forward. And I, in the whole process, ended up helping myself. So I thought, maybe it's another good topic. Let's go dive in. And I made it almost into 2 sessions this time. So
because the more we find out, that how little we know. And it's just amazing. And so with like what Anshumanji brought out and all those concepts was really, really helpful. Thank you, Ajay, for doing that. Seemaji, go ahead and mute yourself.
Yes.
Radhe
Radhe. Between the mind and the intellect, I think if we increase our quota of spiritual merits, punya, then we are able to separate the mind and become the sakshi and see the volatility, the emotions of the mind. And that has helped me. I agree with what everyone else has said, so no need to repeat that. But yeah, you can see the volatility of the mind, all those emotions, the desires, want, and then just step back. The intellect helps you to step back and just watch, see the how the mind is operating, and see the impulsivity, and not really fall prey to it just because it says it wants something, it desires something, and increase that space, that gap, to think about it in the present. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Seema-ji. Well, to extend your line of thought here, right? If you look at the small picture I have on the right side of the screen, and the Agent Smith is actually continuously hitting on Neo. And Neo, what is he doing? He's just fighting with one hand, right? So that's exactly the state we all have to get one day, right? So that our intellect is so armed with divine knowledge, so convinced with this knowledge, that the pushes and pulls and the cravings of the mind,
Bible, what are you doing? Come here,
stop affecting us that much, right? And that is the state that I think when you said Sakshi Bhav and those kind of concepts, I think that is where, when we become an observer, we say, oh, this is my mind. Just like Padmaji was saying, all the temptations it draws us to, right? We realize that these are temptations. Our mind is just playing tricks on us. And we are aware of it, and we start working on it with the divine wisdom in our hand. And that's why all these sessions, conducting and also listening to it and sharing your thoughts, is always helpful in that. So with that, thank you so much. We are running almost at the end of our time. Thank you so much for making this yet another beautiful session. We look forward to the next week, where we will dive into each of the 4 components in much more depth and understand what goes on in each component of the mind, Man, Chitta, Buddhi, Ahankar. And we'll also understand what is to be done with each of these. What is the final goal of each of these components? Beautiful, beautiful session. Don't miss the next week session. And we'll also have the 7 divine laws.
Why just raise hand? Can we take him? Or
let's finish your. If you do, Silva, you have any announcements?
No, I've already made the announcement. I've shared the feedback tracker. So please go ahead, Kumarji. Got about 20 seconds. Go ahead.
Sure. I just wanted to mention that this timing, is so conflicting with the other JK Yoga session as well. And we used to have those 10 o'clock sessions, right? 10 Central.
Right.
It used to be so good. We used to kind of have all the time. It used to be so much fun. And I'm thinking, it's going to be Saturday morning in India. So, it should not be a problem for them either. So would there be a consideration for going back to that time?
I know. So it came back as a suggestion from some of the ones, the East Coast ones. The East Coast participants were very vehemently against it. So that was the reason we changed it back. But we can even run some surveys and try to see where the majority is. So thank you so much.
I will vote more than once, I'll tell you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
With that being said, I will turn the recording off. Ajay Bhai, if you can turn the recording on, please.